Hello everyone, Theodore Burns here. So, I've been racing the Dallara F3 in the Formula Sprint series quite a bit the last couple of weeks, and I've had a lot of fun in it, and I've been doing pretty well, pretty fast, it seems to be at all the tracks, and I thought I'd try and share some of my secrets with all of you and see if I can help any of you improve, find a couple extra tenths, go a little bit faster, be a little bit more consistent. So I'm in the F3 car here at Silverstone-South Circuit, and this is I did this in an official practice session earlier tonight. So I ran a 59.957, which at the time is the first 59 in the U.S. So I was pretty stoked about that lap time. It's my first time ever recording a video here, so I guess please bear with me for any hiccups and stuff. But I'm going to play through the lap here one time, let you all see it in real time, and then I'll go back through and walk you all through each individual corner. So here we go, starting with from the back stretch, a little run up to the lap. Okay, so let's start out here. Back previous lap. So coming up here into the first corner, it's really hard to find a good braking point. That's true for a lot of the corners around this track. So I'll try and pick out some of my references that I'm looking at the best I can. So coming up first corner here, start track right. Obviously, this will depend on a race if you're battling someone. But I'm coming up, I'm looking for the historic circuit here, how it kind of peels off. I'm looking for the curbing here, and it kind of takes a hard kink here, like a hard 90 degrees, and I'm kind of looking for that point as my braking point. Just come up here. It's not quite all the way up there, as it's kind of trailing off. It's just kind of where I'm looking. Once I can see the track through there, that's when I'll hit the brakes. It's usually right around when the curbing starts to peel off there. So coming up here, I like to say in fifth gear, you may bounce off the rev limiter a couple times. I don't like to shift up to 6 because usually I'll end up driving too deep into the corner. So I'm riding up in fifth gear. It's a really hard braking zone, carrying a lot of speed, so I need a lot of initial force, do all that in a nice straight line. Now the F3 car likes a lot of trail brake. So I get my downshifts in, and I start turning into the corner and trailing off, but keeping about that 10% there, excuse me, to carry us all the way into the corner. I like to try and carry that as far into the apex as possible. It keeps the car really planted and allows the nose to really turn the car. There's a lot of downforce here, so the rear end's not going to really slide out. It's a very well-balanced setup that they give us. So I'm carrying that trail brake all the way down, finally releasing it once I'm getting real close to the apex here. So I've come all the way down into second gear, turning into the corner here, and I've hit this. I like to usually try and hit the curb here, bring the left side tires right up to where the grass meets it is usually ideal. So I end up turning a little bit, rotating a little bit too much here because I start getting on throttle really soon. and I have to do a little bit of counter steer here because the car's still rotating, but able to catch it relatively easily, especially with the new tire model here. And I start driving up here towards the next turn, this right-hander. Now this right-hand corner, it's very easy to push wide out of here because you want to get back on throttle really soon out of the first corner, and it's really easy to push wide, and that'll actually end up losing you up to 1 or 2 tenths of a second into the next straightaway. So you want to try and keep this nice and tight on the inside here. And that actually means that once I get up to this curbing, I'm actually going to breathe off the throttle down to about 50–60%. To get the car rotated here. You can actually ride the right side tires up onto the curbing here, and that'll help kind of kick the rear end a little bit. It may be a little unsettling at first, a little bit uncomfortable getting the rear end to slide like that. But as soon as you get off the curbing, it'll get planted really easily, and you won't really spin out, especially once the tires are warm. I'd be careful with the cold tires on your out lap or first qualifying lap. Once I basically get out of the first curbing here, I can start to ease the throttle back in until I can feel it not understeering anymore, and then I can go full. And I'm gonna get the upshifts, and yeah, just try and keep the car in nice and tight over here on the right hand side of the track, and not track out too soon. So I'll come back through that section here, play it one more time in real speed for you. Okay, coming up to this next section here, I like to pick out my brake zone here is pretty easy. I like to look at this access road here. Now you can brake right at the start of the access road, but I find it's usually much more consistent and pretty much just as fast to actually brake about half a car length before the access road. And that's what I end up doing here. Actually full car length here for the access road. So I'm on the brakes, and so I'm coming into this in 5th gear, and in this particular instance I only shift down to 4th. Now I found that if you carry enough speed through here and you take the line just right, 4th gear ends up being a little bit faster, and you end up gaining about a 1/10 down the next straightaway. Even though the revs are low, you still gain quite a bit of time. However, most laps in a race, or especially earlier when the tires are cold, I usually go down to 3rd gear. It's a little bit safer, a little bit more consistent. You end up higher in the revs. It's easier to pull out if you didn't carry enough speed or get the correct line through here. So for this particular lap, it's 4th gear. Now, I'm turning into here. I can ride quite a bit of this first curb. I'm looking to try and get the right side tires, again, right on the transition between the grass and the curbing. If you get a little bit too much onto the grass, it'll kick the center of the car up over that hump, and it'll really upset it and make it really hard to make the next corner here. But if you ride, you want to ride, there's a little bit much, but you want to ride the right side up on the curb there to help rotate it around. You see it kind of kicks there right as the car settles. Now I want to have fast but smooth hands back to the left here, and turn it. Now on the left side here, it's usually okay if you hit this curb. You don't want to ride too much up on it because that can kind of kick you a little bit wide. If you can take it on just the track itself, and that's very consistent, good for races. But when you're looking for that little bit extra, you want to ride the left side tires right here on the inside of the curbing before it really kind of builds up. So that's what I end up doing here. Just left side tires, just barely onto the curbing, using all that track, and that allows you to unwind your hands pretty early here, and I don't come anywhere close to the grass. If you end up riding a little bit of that left-hand curb there, don't take quite the perfect line through. You may end up going a little bit on the grass, which is okay. Just dipping the tire off. If you go a little bit too far, you'll end up picking up a 1X, and if you go a little bit farther than that, there's a huge divot here, and that's a really bad time because it'll usually upset the car quite bad, and you'll end up spinning off to the left side. So you usually want to try and avoid that, and that's why I usually go down to 3rd gear through here in a race. Like I say, you don't lose a whole lot of time, but it's just much more consistent, because in a race you want to be, consistent and make sure you complete every single lap. So play through that section here one more time in real speed so you can see this again. So coming up to this next little section of corners here, the little chicane, it's often asked in the sessions, can you take this flat? And the answer is yes. You should be taking this flat for the best lap time. And to be able to take it flat, you need to have a good approach, a proper line, and a very smooth steering wheel. So part of that proper approach, especially on a hot lap like this, you want to be wide here in this first corner. So you get a nice wider entry, a little bit straighter through the actual chicane itself. You don't need to go ridiculously wide riding out here onto the curb or anything. Just middle of the track is fine coming into this section. Obviously in a race with someone else trailing you, maybe a little different. So now I'm turning in, and this first curb here, you can ride quite a bit of this first curb. I want to put the right side tires, again, right at the transition between the curb and the grass. If you ride a little bit too far over it, you'll get the center of the car up over the curb, and it may upset it a little bit. But you can ride quite a bit of this first curb. If you don't get all the curb, then it may compromise you for the next section here. So now my eyes are looking up through this corner and, up to, basically, 2 corners ahead here. You want to keep your eyes ahead of your hands. So they'll basically tell you where you want to go, and your hands will kind of follow your eyes through the corners here. So for this left-hand corner here, you can take quite a bit of this curb. You could even go a little bit onto the grass before you end up getting a 1X. I'd say left side tire spot over here is once it starts getting you in the 1X territory. So that's kind of nice. You don't really have to be too concerned about that, and it's even farther before you actually get a slowdown penalty. So that's kind of nice that you don't have to be really concerned about getting a slowdown penalty if you don't get this perfectly. But ideally, I'm going to put the left side tires, right here on the curbing, just right on the transition of the grass, and keep the hands real smooth. So if I've done those first 2 corners right, I'm not going to come anywhere close to this guy over here, and that's a good thing because you can ride this concrete curb just a little bit here, but if you get anywhere, right side tires to the edge of this curb where the grass and the access road here meets, there's a huge bump, and it'll really upset the car. I see a lot of people spinning out over here into Beckett's if you don't get that right. So I try and avoid this curb altogether and just stay over here on the track. And you do that through the first 2 corners in this section. Now I'm staying flat through here, so I've been real smooth on the steering, and I'm coming up kind of over this green hump here. So you got to be real careful with this green hump as well, because in the center here there's a big bump, and hitting that, it'll put you into a spin because the car is really loaded up. You're still turning right now. And so on this particular lap, I end up taking quite a bit more of this green spot than I usually like to. I usually like to dip the 2 tires just over here, and you can almost kind of see the seam right here in the graphics where that hump and terrain transition actually begins. But I'm going to come over here to the left side of the track. I actually come a little bit too far and dip my tires just in the grass, which is bad. I usually try and stay right on the transition there. But I'm still coming in, still full throttle, all the way up into this area here. So I actually start to brake right there as I go over the grass. And so this corner here, it suits the F3 car really well. This setup with all the downforce it has, all the front bite, you can really turn the car into really fast. And so I don't want to put in any more than I'd say like 15% brake. So I'm coming in here in 6th gear. And on a hot lap like this, I can actually only go down to 5th gear, and same thing like earlier in the lap, I'll end up, it'll be low in the revs, but if I took the right line through here, I'll end up gaining time down that straightaway, not going down to 4th gear. 4th gear is much more consistent, and again, in a race, I'm usually going down to 4th gear, and you can still run, a 1 minute 00, 0.1, going down to, 3rd earlier and 4th here. So you're not losing that much time. I'm just carrying that little bit of trail brake through here because the car likes the trail brake to get the nose turned in. You want to keep the trail brake on to keep the nose down planted. Basically drive it into the ground to really turn it into the apex here. So my apex here, I'm looking at riding on all along this curbing here, and so right here the car, it's really taking a set. You can really kind of feel it, the left rear load up here, and it's not oversteering, so I'm not losing it in a spin, but I'm not understeering the car. It's just turning really nicely, and you can really feel that in the force feedback. Feel the car take the set, and it doesn't get light on you like it's going to come around. But it's rotating is what it's doing, and that's when you've carried the right amount of trail brake into the corner. So if you've carried that trail brake into the corner, your right side tires are hitting this curb, and the car is pointed in a nice direction, you can actually start to get back on throttle really soon here. We have a really long straightaway coming up, so the faster we can get on throttle, the better. I see a lot of people making mistakes in this corner by driving in too deep and then trying to turn. And so you really want to be braking much sooner. You want to be braking back here so you can, once the time you get to that curbing, you can be on throttle all the way down the straightaway. I see a lot of people in the sessions that try and drive it in far deeper into the corner and then do your braking, and you end up losing way more time down the straightaway. Always go for the faster exit. So I can actually get full throttle pretty soon with the amount of trail brake I've brought into the corner, how much I've gotten it rotated after it took that set riding up on the curb. I can get back to full throttle quite quickly here, and I don't have to worry about it tracking out onto the grass here. If you don't get it rotated quite enough, you don't get the right side tires on that curb there, it's really easy to go a little bit too wide here and dip some tires in the grass, and that's just something you have to get used to lap after lap, and trusting that the car is gonna grab and drive out of it. And I'll end up coming really close here, but not on it, and end up right here onto the curbing, and now it's just a real easy left-hander through Chapel here onto the hanger straight. Carrying as much speed through there as possible. And again, I'm in 5th gear on the hot lap. Normally would go down to 4th, being a little bit more consistent. So I'll show this whole section here again. We'll take it flat all the way through there. Now, one thing I'd like to point out here going through here is the smoothness of the steering. So you want to be really smooth in the steering and transitions back and forth, and you still want to be fast in the steering. And so when I say fast, it does not mean jerky. And smooth does not mean slow. What that means is when I turn into the corner, I go to a set angle, and I don't sit there and bobble the hand. I don't give it more or less input. I'm very direct with the input. I go left. I turn right, I go left, I turn right again, and it's smooth in the inputs because I go right to where I want it to every single time, and that's what you really have to focus on. It's not, giving it a little bit more. It's not flicking it. I'm not jerking it. It's just a very smooth input, but it's still quick. So when I say smooth, that doesn't mean slow hands, and so I'd like to point that out through this section here as we watch the line and inputs one more time. Now we're coming up to the final corner on the lap. It's really easy to mess this corner up because there is I do not have a good braking reference for this corner. It's pretty much different every lap, and this particular lap I end up getting it a little bit off and losing half a tenth to my optimal here. So you definitely want to brake after the turning board here, but coming in after that, it's actually about halfway up to the pit entrance here is I'd say where I'm braking. If you can kind of judge that distance, It's almost, when I can kind of see the corner, see where the curbing starts to go is usually how I kind of judge it. It's just kind of one of those feel things where you just have to practice it, get used to driving deep into the corner. So here it is. I'd say it's about halfway up to the pit entrance road here. So this is a similar case to earlier in the lap. Don't need a whole lot of brake here. I don't want to overslow the car. Using maybe 20% brake pressure maximum. Coming down into fourth gear. I like to turn this one in really early. Turn this one in quite soon, and actually end up getting a little bit of grass. You want to for sure be on this curbing here. Down into fourth gear, get the car rotated, and once you actually get onto the curbing, you can get back on throttle pretty soon. It's just getting the car turned into the corner that's the hard part. You can get back onto full pretty quickly, and you're going to use all of the track here on exit. And this takes quite a bit of practice not to go too far, because it's really easy to push this a little bit too wide, and if you put your left side tires just a little bit on this grass, the car's so loaded up, still turning to the right, just that little bit of grass will send you spinning and over here into the wall. So it just takes a lot of practice and trust in the setup in the car that you're going to end up making this. Practice laps, making sure that if you get the right side tires onto the apex at the previous corner, that you're going to really track through here. And the nice part about this corner is you can actually kind of check yourself. If you're coming into this point right here after you've come off the curbing and you're trying to get on full throttle and the car's not turning or tracking how you want it to, how you're used to, you can actually lift off here, about 50%, and it'll bring the front of the car back around, and you don't end up going off onto the grass. And oftentimes that's far better, especially in a race. You want to be more consistent. You're just that one time there, and you'll end up bending it, and it's going to cost you a lot of time. And just being that more consistent every single lap, if you have to lift it a little bit, yeah, it's going to cost you, a couple tenths down the straightaway, but it's better than being in the pits for a minute and a half tow. So it's one of those you just got to get used to the speeds through here, and realize when you have to check yourself. And it's better to check yourself earlier than later, and realize here that you're riding up too far. But you do that right, you'll end up left side tires right here on the curbing, and you can drive out of it. So again, I'll come back and show the last corner here one more time. Okay, and so that is a lap of Silverstone South Circuit in the Dallara F3 car. Again, this is the first time I've ever made any video like this, so please leave me some feedback if it was helpful, any comments, anything I can improve on, and I guess if you guys would like me to keep making these for the Formula Sprint, because I've really enjoyed the series so far this season, so maybe something I can do for you here every week. So yeah, let me know, and thanks for watching.